Hello, bonsoir, salut à tous, good evening. Welcome to the last FinTech Drinks of 2020. Tonight we're starting off with, I guess, a big group of people. We have Nina, who you met last time, our head of partnerships, and Karina, our newest addition to the FinTech Cadence team, as well as two special guests this evening. Elvis and Molly from Innovate Financial Health in Toronto. So we thought we'd invite people from outside of FinTech Cadence this evening to kick it off because, as you might have heard, we have two special guests joining us in just a few minutes. Jen and Benki, the winners of the Desjardins FinTech Challenge and the co-founders of Cuber. And they're actually alumni of the IFH program. So Elvis, Molly, thank you for being with us. Before I ask you about that experience, what are you guys drinking tonight?
Thanks for having us, Nick. So tonight I'm having scotch. I started this bottle at the beginning of quarantine, and this is the very last glass. So I'm capping it off.
Is the last? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So the bottle is all done now.
What an honor. Well, I'm glad you didn't finish it all tonight because that would have been rough. And Molly, what about yourself?
I'm going between an English breakfast tea and a dirty martini.
Okay. So to put everyone in context, I told everybody this evening they have to have a special drink, whatever that means. I hope you listening at home have a drink as well. We'll be discovering what everyone is drinking tonight. But Elvis, so yeah, could you maybe give us a bit of a foreshadowing of what we could expect and your experience working with Cuber?
Sure. So for you that don't know, Innovate Financial Health, we run an accelerator here in Toronto for fintechs that are helping improve the financial lives of Canadians, particularly those more financially vulnerable. So we've been in talks with Cuber for a long time now, but they were part of our cohort this past year from January to July. And it's just amazing to see the things that they've done and accomplished in terms of actually helping Canadians build emergency funds, helping low-income Canadians in particular that need these types of services and need fintech to help support them. So it's been really exciting to see their progress, and I'm so happy that they won the Desjardins FinTech competition.
Yeah, and we'll meet them a bit later so they could dive in and tell us more about Cuber. And well, I'm excited to see what one of their co-founders is drinking because it's a special day for him. But we'll get into that in just a bit. Nina, how about yourself? What's your beverage of choice?
I decided to drink sangria to remind me of a warm summer day.
Yeah, well, first big snow here in Montreal today. So yeah, I think that's very fitting. Karina, how about yourself?
I decided to do the opposite of Nina. I went for cloudy sake because it reminded me of snow. And I'm really looking forward to Christmas. So cheers. Nice.
There's honestly some original, there's some diversity in what everyone's drinking tonight. I'll show you all. So I launched this challenge, so I wanted to figure out a special drink for me. And I've been going on beers as considering a cocktail, but finishing the last bottle that I got from my road trip this summer in Gaspésie from the microbrewery Oval. If you know a bit of microbrewery in Quebec, this is one of like the most prestigious or difficult to get types of beers. So Elvis, you're finishing a bottle tonight. I'm opening a new one, but and it's a bottle of beer, but it kind of opens like a bottle of champagne. So here we go to the last FinTech Drinks of 2020. Oh my God, I spilt my beer everywhere last time, so I'm just hoping there we go. Okay, perfect.
Cheers.
Well, cheers, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's going to be a great evening, and we're happy to have tons of people online. So yeah, cheers, and let's get this show started. All right. So let me just go ahead and share my screen with all of you. Perfect. So if you're just tuning in, welcome to the last edition of FinTech Drinks of 2020. My name is Nicholas Belliveau, the head of marketing at FinTech Cadence, and I'll be having the pleasure of being your host this evening and the moderator for the panel. I'd like to give a big shout out to our two co-title sponsors who are sponsoring tonight's event, but have also been a tremendous supporter of our whole online series of FinTech drinks. We've done now 5 online since COVID began, and it's been, we've had a phenomenal response. So just a big thank you to EY and Expertis for their continued support in making this event possible and bring the Canadian FinTech community together. I'd like to mention that FinTech Drinks will be coming back in 2021, most likely online for, well, probably the majority of the year. And we are looking for other sponsors for 2021. So if your organization is interested in partnering with us, well, you met Nina, the one who drank the sangria just a bit earlier. She's in charge of our partnerships, and we'd love to speak to you to see what's possible. All right, if you're using Hopin, you will see on this side of the screen, there's the chat where we invite you to, well, let us know what you're drinking tonight. You could interact and as well ask your questions for the panel later this evening. That's where we'll be able to interact with you. We can't see you in person, but we hope to see you in the chat. And then after the panel and Q&A, there's the networking section that you should see right about there on your screen. Hope I'm getting that right. Where you click that, and there's 3-minute networking sessions where you'll be paired up with someone randomly from the FinTech community, and you get to meet one another. So I'll be quickly going over quickly about who FinTech Cadence is, if you've never heard of us. We'll get into the panel, and just before that, we'll also be meeting Jen and Venki from Cuber, then the Q&A, and lastly, the networking. All right, so FinTech Cadence, we're a nonprofit acting as Canada's FinTech hub, and our mission is really to develop future FinTech leaders. We do that through our 3 pillars, one of which is education, support, and collaboration. And this breaks down into our 3 flagship programs. So we have the certificate, which is a 12-week program over 7 courses where you get to learn really the basics of what FinTech is all about. We bring in renowned industry experts to teach each class, and the core teacher throughout the whole program is our executive director, Lael El Hadi. By the way, certificate starts in January, and early bird tickets are on sale ending this Monday, end of the month, November 30th, where you save $200. So if you're interested, invite you to check out the certificate program. We have Ascension, which is the only incubation program dedicated to FinTech startups in Canada. It's an amazing program. We're going into our 4th cohort in 2021. That starts in February, and the deadline to apply is December 18th. And lastly, the Formathon, which is Canada's biggest FinTech competition. We get challenges from our partners, and we recruit students and professionals to form teams, given the name Formathon, and in 3 weeks come up with a solution to those FinTech challenges. We also have a bunch of events, FinTech Drinks, where we're here tonight. We have the FinTech Career Fair, as well as the University Series, where we go around universities in Canada to educate students and introduce them to what FinTech is. Awesome. So that's a quick intro to who we are, and we thank you again for being part of tonight's event. Now, I'd like to welcome our 2 special guests of the evening who are going to share a bit about what they do and their company. Please welcome Jen and Venki from Cuber.
Hey guys.
Hey Jen, hey Venki.
Hello.
How are you?
Great, and you?
Very good, very good. Venki, it's a special day for you from what we hear. Actually, your 50th birthday, if I'm not mistaken.
That is true. That is correct.
It's an honor to have you with us for your special. 50 only comes once in a lifetime. So cheers, Venki. Happy birthday.
Yes.
And what are you drinking tonight to celebrate?
This is a festive smoked Manhattan. I picked up a new habit of smoking drinks for the last month, so I've been trying different drinks. This is a smoked Manhattan, which is festive.
Very nice. Very cool. And Jen, what about yourself?
This is actually a drink that is from a brewery in New Brunswick, and it's based off these candies, which are called chicken bones.
Okay.
Which are like chocolate candies, and it's called Chicken Bones Liqueur. You can only get it in New Brunswick.
Wow. Okay, you guys went all out. I said special drinks. Everyone lived up to the task. Congrats. And what's that?
It's a champagne to celebrate our win.
There you go. Nice. Yeah. So speaking of your win, which well deserved, by the way, could you please tell us a bit about Cuber?
Yeah, sure. So as we all know, 50% of people are living paycheck to paycheck. This is happening for people across all income levels. And I used to be one of those people. I had a hard time managing my money, and the budgeting tools that were out there weren't helping me. So what we did was we created a platform. It's an app. It's in the App Store called Cuber, and it helps people save money through behavioral nudges and gamification. There's saving challenges that earn 2% interest, and we have something called Save to Win, where for every $20 you save, you win money, or you have a chance to win money. So there's a lot of gamification built in. And we've moved $2 million in and out of the vault. So as people are saving, we take money from their spending account and move it to what we call the Cuber Vault, which is an account with a credit union. And people on average come in, they're saving nothing. They get up to saving about $200 a month. And now what we're seeing is that people have built this habit of saving, and they're ready to do more with their money. And that's kind of our next step, is to take these people that have built up an emergency fund and see what else they can do with their money through financial advisor or other like investment products and stuff.
That's awesome. And Venki, for you, what could we see? So now that you guys won this challenge, you won $25,000 and access to Startup in Residence program. What's next for Cuber? What should we be on the lookout for 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, and thank you for all the support. We are really excited with the win. I think it's important for us to just look at the context we are in before I talk about where we are headed. So bear me with a second here. And what Jen talked about is, we know savings are, the future. What are savings? Savings are either future spend or future investment. So really, savings power the wealth generation flywheel, right? And we also know now more than ever, people require help in what they are doing. And that help can come in 4 ways: either individuals themselves, the employers, financial institutions, or government. For individuals, we are already helping. We're helping save checkmark literacy. And then it's the financial institutions that have got advisor network products that they're offering. And in terms of financial advisors, that experience is broken. It's a fragmented experience today. The average age of an advisor in Canada is north of 60. It's hard to retain and engage a client. So what we are doing is really making Cuber smarter to know when do people require help? What kind of help do they require? And actually linking up with the financial advisor and or a product or service, which is automatic and is more smarter than what is available in the market. In terms of employers, we look at it as a movement. If you go back to the industrial age, there was no WorkSafe insurance at that point. The short-term savings, emergency savings, are the new workspace insurance, and that's the moment we are seeing. We have got clients such as Levi's that are using Cuber to provide incentives for people that have short-term savings, recognizing that these emergency funds and liquid assets are really what keeps people, financially well. So we are going to expand a little bit more on how do we get more of groups into Cuber, and then that people that we are getting onto Cuber, and how to help them to actually get whether it be on emergency savings or actually fund their investments into different products. Yeah. So making Cuber smarter is what we are going to be focusing on in the next 6 months, working with employees.
Amazing. It's such an important theme to be working on, especially now with COVID. It just highlights the importance of being prepared for financial emergencies. So kudos to both of you. Thank you for coming on. Venki, happy birthday once again. And we'll see you in the networking, right, after the event. If you want to meet with Jen and Venki, they'll be hanging around for the next portion of the event. So we'll see you a bit later.
Thank you.
Cheers. All right. Now is the part we've all been waiting for, the actual panel conversation. So we're going to get that started in about 30 seconds. I'd like to welcome our 3 panelists to the stage: Philippe Daoust, the managing director at NAventures at National Bank; Jan Arp, the founding managing partner at Holt Accelerator; and Tamara Zimmerman, the head of innovation and wavespace at EY Canada. Good evening. Hello. Welcome to Fintech Drinks. Thank you for being here. I'd like to kick it off by going around the table. I gave a quick introduction to your titles, but I'd love to hear a bit about, so everyone listening could know a bit about what you do and where you work. Tammy, if you don't mind, we'll kick it off with you.
Sure, absolutely. So first off, thanks so much for having me. Really exciting to be here tonight. So a little bit about me. I've been in the corporate innovation space for about 10 years now. I'm with EY. And for those of you who don't know, EY is a professional services company. We do consulting, tax, assurance, and transactions. And my role there, as Nick mentioned, is I lead up our innovation and wavespace. So I'll explain wavespace in a minute, but basically it's two hats, internal and client facing. So from an internal perspective, I lead, we have a program to ideate and innovate and incubate new ideas on how we should better run our business and we can better serve our clients. And from a wavespace perspective, it's more client facing, where we run point-specific innovation strategy sessions with our clients to help them think about how they run their business better and how they serve their clients better. Take an inside-out approach, obviously, voice of customer, voice of employee, voice of the tech community in everything we do. Quickly, before EY, I was with BDC, Business Development Bank of Canada, ran the innovation program there in a startup experiment lab. Prior to that, I just kind of grew up in management consulting and systems integration. So really excited to be here tonight and share some perspectives.
Well, it's awesome to have you with us, Tammy. Thank you for being here. And by the way, I didn't ask, what are you drinking this evening?
Yeah, was waiting for that. So, so what I've got here is a Martini Rossi, which is red vermouth, very carefully poured over ice with you can't see it, but a little slice of lemon in there, which is exactly how my Italian father-in-law taught me to have a drink every evening.
Very nice.
Not every evening, but.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here. Philippe, we'll go over to you next. Could you please tell us a bit about yourself and your role at National Bank, and also, obviously, what you're drinking this evening?
Yeah, I'll start with the interesting part, which was what I'm drinking. I'm drinking the blackberry cider. It's still fall, although it's snowing outside, and cider is always the best drink to drink in the fall, especially that it's coming back up into Quebec. So I encourage everybody to taste it. In terms of what I do, I'm head of NAventures, the internal strategic investment funds from National Bank. We've got a bit over $100 million in management, invested 70 million out of that 100 million in 16 different companies. Very soon to be 18. Though it's a strategic fund, it's not a pure return-based fund. So we've put out of the 16 companies we've invested in, 14 are actively used by National Bank. So that's quite a big success on that front. 15 of the 16 are Canadian company. Several of them are now looking to expand outside of Canada, which was one of the goals of the fund as well. Find company that we can work with, but also grow the Canadian ecosystem by giving them what was often their first big client, that was vetting them on the market and allowing them to grow faster inside Canada, and now having the pedigree to grow as outside Canada as well, and which I think is a big success.
Awesome. Yeah, no, indeed. And well, thank you again for being here, and exciting to get your insights from the bank perspective. Last but not least, we have Mr. Jan Arp, who's actually here at the last end of year recap Fintech Drinks of 2019, when we had the pleasure of doing it in person. How's it going, Jan?
Doing fantastic. Great to be here among some really distinguished panelists.
Yeah, no, it should be a great conversation. So for those who don't know you, could you tell us a bit about yourself and what your beverage tonight is?
Beverage of choice, Saison Tradition. It's inspired by the Belgian farmers, right? And what they would be drinking after a hard day toiling in the fields. And I say, hey, as an investor, we plant seeds, we help cultivate the next generation of future tech. And so working in that space, I say, I had a hard day as well, just like those fellow farmers, and Belgians know how to make a great beer. So, hey, that's what I'm going with right now. I'm in the IPA world, and I haven't got out of it ever since I joined the bandwagon. A little bit about myself. Let's see, I guess about 5-6 years back, I noticed there was a bit of gap in the early stage development of fintech related startups. I started really helping a bunch of companies, about 15 or so, raise like 15 million bucks, give or take. It was a grind. It was a lot of work, but realizing there needs to be more in platforms and systems to be able to do this more efficiently. Got a little help along the way from both fellow panelists. Would love to speak about that a little bit later on. Doing things, for instance, I created this one nonprofit called Form Fintech, which later became Fintech Cadence. Eventually realizing, hey, there's another area in the pipeline that needs to be solved for. Very fortunate, a family, 5th generation, said we also want to be giving back to the early stage ecosystem. They've been doing a bunch of direct and investing into funds. So this was the legacy of Sir Herbert Holt's and the Holt Dunn family. We joined forces. We launched a small fund. We kickstarted 3 years later, 27 investments, making us sort of the largest seed stage, early stage investor in Canada now in terms for fintech. We're only fintech. And having a great time doing it with now 400 advisors, majority of which 80% are Canadians. So very proud of our accomplishments to date. And, it's a great time being fintech.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you as well for joining us for a second year in a row. And I love the description of your drink. You all, everyone tonight had very researched, they took the challenge of a special drink seriously. So thank you for doing that. Tonight, we'll have 2 parts to the panel. We'll start off with some very quick rapid fire questions just to get warmed up, and then we'll dive into the deeper and longer questions. I have 2 rapid fire questions for the both of you. Jan, the first one's for you. In 20 seconds about, your favorite fintech of 2020 and your favorite drink.
Well, fintech drink, I guess. I mean, I do love rum and cokes, but I love IPAs. And then I would say favorite fintech. I mean, it's tough to say. We got 27 favorites. I will say one that surprised me the most this year, and it's going to be, of course, going to our portfolio. It's not this particular company, Owl, has surprised me, not because I expected them, like I fully expected them to go from 1 million to 4 million in revenues in 6 months after they consolidate and focus on a key product, which is fantastic because COVID has seen acceleration of that. But what surprises me the most is how we still don't even talk about some of these great early stage success stories, right? It's just we're waiting for them, I guess, until they are almost a unicorn, and then we start talking about it. Anyway, so if you haven't checked them out yet, check out Owl. They are very fast moving. We have 26 other ones to look at, but let's give them a round.
Awesome. Tamara, what was the most surprising trend for you in the financial sector this year?
Yeah, I'd have to say maybe less than surprising and more just interesting and exciting. Even if I just look back in the last 2 weeks, I think some really exciting things have been happening. I'll name maybe a few rapid fire. So one, we saw Payments Canada announce their partnership with MasterCard and Vocalink, so as a clearinghouse for real-time rails. I think that's really exciting progress on that front, and it's going to open up a whole new world of opportunity for fintech. I think, again, even in just the last couple of weeks, we saw the announcement of NASDAQ acquiring Verifin, and I think that's a head nod. You're mentioning Owl, Jan. I think it's a head nod to how important fraud detection companies are becoming. And then lastly, this is more of a US focus, I guess, but Google Pay. I don't know if anybody's been, kind of watched exactly what's been going on. They just released the new revamped Google Pay. They reimagined really banking a little bit. And I think they've just really upped the bar for retail banking experience in the US at this point. So I think the bar has just shifted a little bit for all of us, but exciting opportunities as well.
Yeah, a lot has happened for sure.
Yeah.
Philippe, on your end, so COVID happened this year. What was COVID's impact, the biggest pro and the biggest con of COVID for fintech in Canada?
Acceleration of existing fintech, deceleration of new fintechs. So I think it's going to be easier for existing fintech to grow because people are trying to get a bit more secure footing, and in banking as well as in insurance, people are trying to move faster into digital. Newer fintechs are just going to have difficulty raising money this year. The funds have been doubling down on the company they already have investment in, rather than investing into new companies.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, lighter note, Jan, once the travel ban is lifted, where would you want to travel to?
I was really hoping to get off to Palm Desert at some point to get down there as we have, my parents like to frequent down there every so often. Other than that, more on a professional note, every year around this time, come January, there was the Paris FinTech Forum. That was my chance to get over to Europe and see some of our European advisors and partners. So, with the professional and leisure side of things, it looks like maybe not until Q3 that we really starting to move in terms of waiting in line for our vaccines.
Yeah, well, we're working from home for a bit. And speaking of which, Tamara, working from home, is it working for you?
It is absolutely working for me. I didn't mention, but I actually have 3 kids. So let me tell you, having the 30 minutes back from the commute every morning and every evening has just changed the game for our family dynamics. And it's a lot more pleasant in the house these days. So definitely working for me. I don't miss the high heels, and I do appreciate the yoga pants sometimes. So there we go.
Awesome. And Philippe, I was going to ask you this one en français. On l'avait préparé avant-hier. T'étais excité pour la neige. Today we had a big snowstorm. So maybe it's like, are you happy with the snow, or you rather the warmer weather?
No, I hate slush. So yeah, I'm super happy it's snowing. I hope it stays for the weekend. But as soon as it's turned into slush in the city, it's I hate it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you all for the rapid fire. Now we move on to the bigger questions at hand and understanding really COVID's impact on the financial sector this year. So a look back at 2020, but also then in the second part, looking forward to 2021, what this means for fintech in general. Jan, you're in contact with tons of startups. Could you give us a snapshot of how these early stage startups have been doing this year overall?
Yeah, I'll try and fly through some buckets before I get to the startup. So let's talk about the financing ecosystem. We saw a freeze. We saw it drop to about 50% of capacity, although fintech and great companies were still able to get financing through that. We're seeing a rebound to that, roughly about 80% of where the capacity was before. But a lot of that financing is still later stage. We've seen more and more family offices or others excited, and Philippe touched on it, reinvesting their existing portfolios, but looking to get into the game, into fintech, because it's done so well during these times right now. But the early stage financing is still a very heavily overlooked spot. If we look at, I want to speak quickly about the government side, lots of initiatives internationally. Let's talk about Canada, rubber stamping the R&D side of things through the IRAP programs and others. Matching fund programs certainly did alleviate a lot of the issues there, which made actually Q2 to be one of the best quarters in Canada year over year for record, but not sure how long that will be and how sustainable that would be. That said, there's still challenges. We didn't engage our fintechs for distributing funds, for disbursement, or we still didn't move very quickly on a lot of regulations. In a world for which digital adoption is increasing, we still haven't got our stuff and act together around as open banking or other very important digital trends that are occurring right now. So we need to move much quicker there. Moving to the corporates, and because this all ties back to how the stars play in, there has been some areas where an acceleration of adoption. So, but they've pivoted and being able to identify that, and startups that are nimble enough who are already targeting those sweet spots. We talk about fraud, it could be insurtech, onboarding. There's different areas for which accelerated the adoption, which would mean you would get our customers. So now speak a bit specifically about, actually just finish on that note. We will see how well this goes in the future with budgets potentially being not as big into 2021 as the impacts of the pandemic start getting felt, as we go forward, and then we ease off the brakes. At some point, we can't keep dumping money for stimulus funds here. Now, as for the fintechs themselves, for the most part, fintech is a great industry to be in right now. We saw it with their own portfolio companies. The companies post our initial investments have raised 25 million, of which 17.5 million happened during COVID, right? So it's definitely, and this is multiple rounds, seed rounds, A rounds that are occurring right now. So still showing signs it's doing well. We're seeing them doing very well in terms of customer adoption, as long as they can pivot and adjust. So it's really, obviously, the better your team you are, the better suited you are to pivot in the better area that you're in to take advantage of this opportunity. It's still very challenging though, right? It's not as easy to necessarily there are long-term contracts that were like 18 months of negotiations that were just pulled, or let's call them postponed, right? And we're seeing even team issues, right? And this is if anything, maybe it's a better magnifying glass, because that's what we invest in. We invest in teams and entrepreneurs. And this is definitely, there's going to be some frictions that can be caused through this new ways of working together and hard pivots that had. And so you're really starting to see who kind of shakes out during this time. So yeah, I'm still very optimistic about, very fortunate to be in the fintech ecosystem. Like I say every day, like I'm very lucky to be in this industry that it somehow decided to go down this path. But yeah, but there'll be still some challenges to come.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Jan. Philippe, I want to shift over to you now to see from more of the bank side. And I think tonight's panel is great because we have from the startup investor side, the banking side, as well as Tamara from the consulting and industry level side, so to speak. At National Bank, has collaboration with fintechs slowed down, or you ended up partnering with more fintechs than other years this past year?
It didn't change anything, actually. We changed the project. That's what changed. The amount of fintech we work in, the amount of fintech we invest in didn't change. So we're focusing a lot more onto what is client facing, helping us improve the client experience. As a lot of clients that were unused to be digital had to move to digital, for example, we wanted to smooth that experience out rather than, for example, concentrate on how could we provide client better services through understanding the data we have on the client. So it changed the kind of project we had, but it didn't deter us or slowed us down into working with fintechs. And I think that as we're moving along in the next few years, it's actually going to accelerate those, because yes, we're talking about budget cut. I think it's going to be industry-wise that there's going to be budget cut. For me, in the fintech world, for me is brilliant, because if they have less budget, they'll be less tempting to build everything internally, and we'll be looking towards our external partners to go and provide us with those services. So a ton of opportunity out there for fintechs for sure. Now, that doesn't mean the sales cycle is going to be shortened significantly with financial institution, because the hurdle to deal with a big corporation, be it a bank, an insurance company, or whatever, is always going to be there. So,
and you mentioned internal innovation. How has that been this year at National Bank? Did you guys do more of that this year to adapt to the new reality, or was still the projects that were in place just kept moving forward, or were they cut? How did you guys live it?
We, during COVID, we had to react again to something that was very special. And let's face it, like the banking sector was badly prepared to go fully digital. The insurance sector was unprepared at all. And we all had to move in a record time. And what happened is that to do a project in National Bank usually would take 2 years. And then suddenly we had to do them in 2 or 3 months. And I hope it's going to stay, but it brought a culture where you think in terms of innovation way quicker, and you deploy solution way quicker as well. So I really hope it's going to stay. Mildly optimist there, but it did change during COVID how we were looking into deploying that innovation to client.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I think that makes sense. I think that's a thing that resonates with most companies. Everyone had to adapt in one shape or another. It's just we know banks are such large institutions. Sometimes it's slower than others, but it's great to hear that your cycle has shrunk dramatically. Tamara, from a industry-wide perspective, start off with the first question. What have you been seeing? Where have companies been focusing their innovation budgets? Overall, have they been spending more, or they've been cut? We know in the future they're going to be probably cuts, but how have companies overall adapted?
Yeah, good question. I'll admit I probably can't speak for the details of the innovation budgets and where they're going, but what I can do is talk a little bit about what we're observing in terms of the appetite for innovation strategy and doing innovation, talking about innovation with our clients. So when we engage on innovation discussions, we typically frame it in a now, next, and beyond framework at EY. And for sure, at the beginning, when the pandemic hit, everybody got really focused on the now crisis management, and we probably did see a little bit of a halt in terms of appetite for innovation, just in terms of being in survival mode. But very quickly, I would say, the large companies realized very quickly that they needed to pivot and spend the time and attention and have the appetite to think about the next and beyond, because otherwise, it doesn't go very far very fast. So we did see that, and we did see that across industries. I would say, from a financial services perspective, the types of things that even over the last few months we're seeing is just the digital agenda. Philippe was talking a little bit about that, but not only client experience acceleration and how do we deal with the new normal, but also employee experience and what's that going to look like in the new normal. So, executives from large institutions are realizing that's something they need to focus on. Of course, open banking and how do we prepare for that? Product innovation, general growth strategy. We've been seeing all of that still. So I think there's still a big appetite for innovation from corporates. On that note, one little anecdote I'll share. This also kind of just came out this week, maybe even yesterday, but there was an announcement. So it's not financial services, but Telus just announced a $100 million fund for social innovation or social entrepreneurship. And that's really that's a huge sum, and that's a really nice indication that corporates in Canada are thinking about and investing in long-term value in the future. So I thought that was kind of a nice, anecdote to talk about in terms of appetite for innovation and investment there.
Yeah, and I like the idea of now, next, and beyond. So in financial services, I guess the emergency phase is now over. What are institutions looking at for this next phase, and what are the discussions for that beyond?
Yeah, well, so I mentioned a couple, in terms of open banking and the digital experience, both on a consumer angle, branches, what that's going to look like, the employee experience. But I think, one thing I'd love to talk about from a macro trend, and this maybe comes a little bit from my own experience and where I grew up professionally, but I think what we're seeing here, and that's been exacerbated by 2020 and by the pandemic, is this battleground for SMEs, so the small and medium business market segment. So we were certainly seeing that already before the pandemic, but it's kind of been exacerbated or we're seeing it a little bit more now. And the thing about the SME market is that it's always been a really tough one to serve profitably, because you really got to get the right balance between in-person complex advisory with them, as well as automating what you can. So getting that right is hard, and we had already seen a lot of financial institutions looking for platform plays. So as Philippe mentioned, how do they take advantage of the ecosystem, startups or other providers to help provide that end-to-end experience in an efficient way. But it's tough. And so what we're seeing now is, 10 to 30% of entrepreneurs are going to go bankrupt. I saw that in one of the studies. And I think what we're seeing right now is this, it's time. This is the time they're going to make or break that loyalty. So if SMEs are important for the future, you got to treat them well now, because even if they go bankrupt, they're going to be serial entrepreneurs. We're going to see them again. And North One, right? We all know and love North One from Montreal. They're out in the US right now, and they've got 190,000 SMEs signed up for them. Basically, signed up for the subscription model, SME banking. It's talking with their feet that the large banks are not doing what they need to be doing for the SME market. And so I think what's interesting is, whoever's doing right by them now is probably going to win the loyalty of the SMEs for the future. And so that whole battleground for the SME, I think, is a really strategic play right now, exacerbated by the fact that they're all being hit so hard by COVID.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting insight. And now that there's tons of new opportunity, and Jan, maybe I'll go over to you for this one, because over the last years we've just seen more and more fintech startups focus on personal finance management. We're seeing a lot of the same, just with a new twist or a new design. COVID is opening up tons of new doors and new opportunities. Focusing on SMBs is one. We mentioned fraud detection earlier. What do you see as the new trends in fintech where new companies can focus their attention when there's new possibilities?
I think there's a lot of areas to focus on right now, which makes it always very exciting. Every year we get that we pull. We have a big database, 10,000 fintechs, and then we segment and go off. And we've received about 18 applications, and every year I'm going, wow, there's a lot of cool ideas that that are out there that we're not thinking about, and that's a great approach to attacking it. So now, are there different segments? Sure, I could throw out a bit of buzzword bingo, and we can hear how we feel about that. So anything from like working with the youth right now and how to get them better, educated and online, although, dealing with the regulations around that. On the flip side of that, the idea of decumulation. So working with seniors, how can you, support them in the estates and their next stages of their life. Things around digital identity is still a big issue, which we haven't properly solved for yet, that we've been trying to. We've made a couple investments in that space and waiting for the banks to further adopt and accelerate the pace that they were doing that. But you can even target specific segments within. Like if we look at people like, oh, lending's done. Well, lending's not done. Like there's like still very profitable business lines. It's the way that you're doing lending right now. So it could be the use of alternative data sets within it to better improve the underwriting side of things, which we haven't fully gone all the way into. We were really bullish on InsurTech this year. We felt that InsurTech, if the banking sector already in Canada was already, arguably 5, 6, 7 years behind, the big movement that happened in the 2000 post the financial crisis. So it kind of kicked off, let's say 2015. InsurTech is already like themselves several years behind. We actually saw this rush into it, right? Through them establishing innovation departments and people to adopt, which I think are good areas for them to get into the ball game to start trying. Digital assets, super bullish on, very excited to see where we go when we finally accept something called securitized token offerings. So I'm not talking about we can see there's always a line of different people who are like, you're either for crypto up to a certain point or you're traditional up to a certain point. I do believe there will be a world where we'll flip over and it'll be all very merry. Securitized token offerings, I mean, there's just like an efficient mechanism of being able to fix the balance sheet, the equation, the cap table, whatever we want to call it, right, of that process in the back. I still think there's tons to do, but when that flips on, there's still some challenges getting that on board. Supply chain issues that we've seen here. We played in agriculture this year, and I'll tell you that's in a world unto itself. We go down the banking side of things, and like most part, they're like, oh, that's the agriculture, because we don't talk to them. That's a whole other department into itself. So, I mean, I just want to run through, like, I know that's just buzzword bingo right now, but there's still lots to do and lots of areas to fix, and it's exciting. Yeah, you at home, if you're listening, if you did get hit bingo, write it in the chat, and we'll send you a prize. Philippe, so with all these new opportunities coming up, could you share with us what's the new projects happening at the bank? What's next that you guys are working on to be able to offer a better experience to your end users, to your business clients, etc.?
Yeah. So listen, can't go into too much detail into that, obviously, but I think we mentioned a few. Fraud is always a big thing. Cybersecurity and fraud, always on top of mind of all the banks. Let's not kid ourselves. We're not in a world where any institution in the world is 100% secure. That's not the bank. That's not the U.S. government. That's not anyone. And we all need to always keep improving, because this is the only way to try to keep the attack at bay. So obviously that's one. The second one that we have in mind is, how do we improve the banking experience for our clients? We've invested, for example, in Mocha this year to help people save money. We've invested in Flink so that people can access their data more easily, as it is very important for people to have control over their own data. It's not something the bank or any company should be controlling. So there's really a lot of area that we're touching. And it's not, I know people like to put out buzzword, but it's not a question of buzzword. It's really a question of what the client lives through, or the employee, because we also look after employee. And that's why, as a fintech fund, people are often surprised that we invested in a company like Dialogue, which provide telemedicine for employees. And we did that because we wanted to have NBC employees having the best experience in terms of medical advice. So again, it's a question of opportunity. It's a question of going into the client services and help them understand better their finance. And I think that once people do understand better their finance, and I know John has been working with a lot of company that does that, then you help people get out of the credit card debt and move into a more sustainable environment. And that's profitable for everyone, by the way.
Yeah, no, definitely. We have a few minutes left before we move into the question period. So I'd invite people listening, if you already have some questions that you'd like to ask one or any of our panelists this evening, feel free to write it in the chat, and I'll be reading it out in just a few minutes. I would like to go around the table, since you have the Canadian FinTech community listening this evening. A recap conversation is always quite broad, and a lot of the same things are said. But when you have everyone listening for moving forward, we know there's tons of possibilities, but there's still a lot of challenges, government regulation. What would you want the community to know, if you had some closing words to share? Tammy, maybe we could start with you. Your last words for the FinTech community for 2020.
Yeah, sure. I think they just be words of encouragement. You've heard through the last little bit, we've all been talking that for as much as as there is challenges, I think the upside is there's tremendous opportunity coming, and the disruption and the changes that are going to happen in the financial services world are just going to open up more and more opportunities. I think it's great. I know also, I think it's a great time for FinTech, as Jan said earlier, but also very cognizant that this virtual world is really tough in terms of networking. And I know networking is one of the key things, in terms of growing as a FinTech. So keep at it, keep doing events like this. So we're always scouting and looking for FinTechs to work with and deliver services with. I'll give a little bit of shout out to a few folks that we're working with. So Koyos, Quantilio, Prodago, Resolution. I think some of those might be in the audience today. But that's it. Keep on networking as much as we can in the virtual world, and focus on the opportunities to come. Awesome, thank you, Tammy. Jan, what about yourself? What would be your final? I wish I remembered. I don't know if you remember your last words of the 2019 event for everyone. 2020 didn't go as planned, so even if you said something encouraging, it maybe was not the most relevant. But for this year, what would you say to the audience?
Oh yeah, it's hard to remember. I mean, it is FinTech Drinks after all. So after a networking beverage or two, it gets a little blurry. But 2 words, I'd say: competition, collaboration. I'm going to focus first on competition. We need to make that the central thesis and mission for what we're doing in Canada right now, right? Like, this is open banking is about, in many ways, leveling the playing field and enabling more players to come on. And we need to better find that and put that at the center of what we're doing to foster this more sustainable ecosystem that's competitive and healthy. And I think we've forgotten that along the way. So we need to find a way to better foster the competition within the ecosystem. We're still a very politically established nation, and we need to find a way to make that the mandate so that we can then de-risk it and not be so reliant on government intervention to come in this situation. I will flip to the positive, though, and say about collaboration. I will say that is probably one of the greatest strengths of Canada. I have 2 examples here that I'd like to refer to, 2 exhibits. Exhibit A, I'll refer to Tammy. We actually, one of the first partnership that we did, right? I was running around like a chicken with its head cut off, being like, we got to do early stage FinTech stuff. And then Tammy's came in and was like, all right, well, what do you want to build? We built this, I think it was the first FinTech program in Montreal. This dates back 2015, 2016. And then you came in and you sponsored, right? You stuck your neck out and you had to pitch that to the higher ups, right? And so your neck's on the line going, Jan, don't disappoint me. And it was great. We had 150 people. We had some great speakers that showed up. Mocha was one of the pitches then, right? When they were getting started. Payment Rails was also there, and another, and we brought together the ecosystem, and others came in. Finance Montréal was there. It's like, I want a pitch contest for our forum. I said, great, we have momentum. Let's do FinTech, form FinTech that became FinTech Cadence, and the rest is history. Exhibit B, or Exhibit P for Philippe, is that we kicking off Holt's Accelerator. Right as I first started, I needed to work closer with the bank to understand their challenges and what they're seeking for. Like, that's what we're doing. We're a matchmaker. He's been incredibly forthcoming and telling me what to look for. And his work, he's like, here are contacts. Every selection day, I'm pinging him, and he's coming. He's supporting. He's bringing those key. He's getting them to show up. you know, and he's even helped with me in some of my pitch decks and helped me refine it. He's given a lot of time. So yes, like there's sponsorship of time and money, and that's the key to help people unlock and move forward. So I guess basically what I'm saying is all the activities are thanks to Tammy and Philippe, so we can thank them, but collaboration is key here.
Well, thank you, Jen. I always love your closing words of of the year. I'll move it on to Exhibit P, to Philippe. What would you like to share with the FinTech community as some last words?
Hope. It's the year that Canada takes the world by storm. We've built great fintechs, and they're really ready to go onto the world stage now. And you know, a few years ago when I invested in Flinks, everyone was telling me I was crazy because Plaid was going to roll all over them. Today, Flinks is invading the US, and Plaid is not invading Canada. Canada is a great market to start, conquer a market, get your base ground, move to the rest of the world and conquer it with a great offer. So that's my word for everybody here that think that they're underdogs because they're in Canada and not in the US. They're in a small market versus a huge one. Well, you know what? Underdog can win. And this is exactly what we're seeing in the fintech space today. So let's continue doing that. And as an ecosystem with Jan, Tammy, everyone, people at Desjardins, RBC, all the big banks, we're all working to make this ecosystem a great one for the fintechs, and we can win. And by the way, having a 2.75 billion deal happening in Canada out of St. John's, Newfoundland, is just a wow factor. And the world is noticing that, yeah, we're there and we're going to win. So congrats to everyone that started business.
Cheers to that.
Yeah, I'll cheers to that.
Cheers to the underdogs.
Cheers. And it's great, actually. I just realized that you're speaking for it because, well, now that it's online, these speeches are recorded. So we will be able to reference them next year and see what happens at the end of 2021. But thank you all three for coming on and taking the time to speak with us. It's greatly appreciated. And I've been seeing some questions come into the chat, so I'm going to read that and shoot them over to you. The first one is from Venki. He asks, what would be a safe bet that FIs would make to help Canadians, and what would be a bold bet? So Philippe, maybe that one would be for you, a safe bet that FIs would make to help Canadians.
There's no such thing as safe bet. You know, it's always funny. I always say at the bank, because we're a risk mitigation organization, right? And I always say, if there's no risk, there's no profit. If there's a safe bet, in my book, there's no company. So I'll go with the bold right away, as I don't believe in safe. I think that the biggest mistake Canada could make, and we're making it right now, is to do open banking like the other did it. So Europe did open banking first, and we're all looking towards Europe, and we're all, yay, let's do the same thing as Europe. And we're all thinking it's going to increase the competitiveness of the market. In Europe, it decreased it. Several middle and small banks are hurting right now because they didn't have the mean to follow open banking in the way the regulation was made. And the big bank just picked up all the market. So let's be very careful about easy answer of saying, yeah, open banking is just going to explode competitiveness because it allows a few fintechs to come in. There's still a middle, medium and small bank side that are extremely important to the ecosystem that we need to think about as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We have a question from John Cowley. Is there something that is too innovative in fintech? Are banks and credit unions consultants prepared to make the occasional bet on tech that is beyond their comfort zones? Or is it more about incremental innovation with a clear fit and path to ROI? Jan, maybe you want to tackle this one?
Sure. I mean, yes, and many, like, you need to have a very clear beachhead entry point as you come into it. So we've seen a lot around, okay, the fringes, right? So there's the core that banking is doing, and tackling that can be challenges. So you kind of like look directly off the core and the fringes to be able to build add-ons for them where they feel comfortable to work with it. And this is also on the B2B, but in many cases, you need a financial institution as a partner truly disruptive, like, or new tech can be very hard to integrate when you're too far out and you don't have a path or visibility to get there. Like digital assets is a great story of trying to change the way in an infrastructure that's not quite set with a challenging beachhead to enter and finding that sweet spot for where it's solving a key problem for them to adopt it in a way that mitigates the risk, that they feel comfortable, that they see a lot of value in doing it. With and doing that, there's a lot of cost, so they need to run like parallel systems, and it's getting complex. And they're trying; they have dedicated teams to be able to do it, but it's just not sort of like working. I think for us, from an investment standpoint, I mean, we definitely need to see a path that, I don't know if to say truly innovation, but I mean, from our side, how maybe it's one of those things that you look back at and you go, well, wait a minute, why didn't we ever have this before? Right? I look at Simple and robo advisory and onboarding and streamlining that process. Is this crazy innovation, or is it just good user interface and good brand? I'm not knocking that either. I think that's somewhat we need right now. So we still need a lot of these areas, and there's a lot of opportunity to do that as well.
Awesome, thank you, John. We have another question from Bulkus Ben. Says we heard a lot about investments this evening and overall, but what about lending? So what are your thoughts about the credit defaults that have been exacerbated this year? Maybe Tamara?
I think maybe that's a Philippe question.
I'm not specialized in credit at all. So that's a difficult question for me. And listen, what we're seeing, and you've seen it through a bank's financial statement, where obviously the debt provisioning went up quite a lot. So I'm not as close to because I think your question is more referring to commercial rather than retail. I'm closer to retail than commercial. On the retail side, what we're seeing is consumer debt going up. Like credit card debt went up during the pandemic. People that put off their mortgage payment, reality is going to catch up with them at some point, and they need to pay houses again. And that means that, yes, there is a bubble right now. And that's why you've seen bank provisioning like crazy over 2020 to protect themselves from that bubble bursting in 2021 when government helps run down. And I would believe it's the same in commercial. For banks, commercial is not as heavy, because if you look at the businesses that had difficulty, you're looking at bars, you're looking at restaurants, you're looking at hotels, and those are already seldomly served by bank. They were more served by tier 2 lenders. So are we going to see tier 2 lenders go down? I don't know. I wouldn't go as far as that, but definitely on the retail side, unless employment picked back up in 2021, it's going to be a hard year.
Yeah, thank you, Philippe. We have another question coming in. Open banking consultation phase 2 has started. Everyone, please explain why it matters to you and consumers.
So I can start a little bit on that. So obviously, we call it consumer-directed finance. I think it's even in more than that. It's going to affect commercial as well. So what's interesting in the second round of consultations, they set up the framework, which I think we all expected. What are the standards? What are the accreditations going to be? Kind of like what we saw in the UK. What's interesting right now, and maybe what's going to affect consumers the most, and maybe most immediately, we saw again in the past couple of weeks, right? We just tabled a law or put it out there to be passed, but around privacy. So what's happening now? We're getting a little bit more concrete into what really consent means when you're consenting with your data. You have to be a lot more specific around what you're consenting to. So I think that whole angle of trust from the consumers into open banking is going to be elevated pretty quickly by some of that stuff. So it looks like we're going, moving in the right direction. And I think from a consumer angle, the hesitation we may have seen in the past hopefully will be alleviated a little bit by that, because that's coming in quickly. And then, part of the framework also calls for a body to be able to do recourse so that consumers have, somewhere to go if they want to bring up a grievance. So I think that's really interesting. So from a consumer perspective, that whole Data Piece and Privacy Act is huge, I think, right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Tammy. And I see we just lost Jan. I think he's reconnecting, but I'm glad it was in the question period. But I think he's back on his phone. Let me just add him to the call. Hey, Jan.
I had this great setup, and my computer, this Mac. I went to Mac, and it crashed on me every so often. I guess it just doesn't like me. I was a PC user for life, so that's my punishment.
Well, we're very lucky that mine didn't crash, because then the show would have had some major technical difficulties. But I'm glad you could join us back, because there's one last question for you from Abhishek, who asked, to attract more funding to seed stage companies, do we see a future where more FIs and telecom companies coming together to create a large fund in Canada?
Would love that. That would be fantastic, and we can all collaboratively, joyously come together and invest and share problems and find companies, and we can all pick in. I think there's an opportunity to do that, and I see the value, but that's a big but. Getting, first of all, financial institutions to invest into funds is very challenging right now. Budgets they look at, there's new liquidity crunches that are occurring on an international framework that's been set. And so we have to look at the Department of Finance of whether or not they're going to look into these rules and say, basically, the short end of it is for every dollar you invest into a fund, you need to set aside $1, which a bank has worked on leverage, and this doesn't have great economics on it all of a sudden. So that's one. Getting the telecoms to come in, while it has been better on the European front and a much more better integration than international, because there's like this system to transfer. You can transfer data, and data can have a value that hasn't really rang true in Canada. A focus has been in other industries, but not really specifically on fintech. So that one has been sort of overlooked in this situation for that particular area. So hopeful. I wish we would start looking at this more and make it a priority, but in the short term, medium term, it's gonna take some more efforts of convincing.
We could ask Santa, but we'll have to wait and see. Well, in the chat, everyone's thanking you for your answers. So thank you so much for your participation and taking the audience's questions. On that note, that's all the questions we had. So once again, thank you to the three of you for joining us this evening. Happy holidays. It's probably a bit early to wish you that, but we're in the season. So thanks again, and we'll hopefully see you again in 2021.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Cheers. So to wrap up tonight's event, there's still the networking that's going to take place. So I would invite you to stay tuned for that. And I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen one more time so you could give you the final remarks. Here we go. We're speaking about technical difficulties, but so far we didn't have too many. But I'd like to thank once again our sponsors, EY and Expertis, who made this whole series possible and making tonight possible. And once again, if anyone's interested for supporting us for 2021, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you and see what we could do together to make these events even better for next year. We also have a poll, which you'll see just above the chat in one of the tabs. We'd love your feedback. It's simply rating tonight's experience from 0 to 10. So if you could please give us your feedback, that'd be awesome to hear. Just what you thought of tonight's event. It helps us make them even better for next time. And now we move on to the 3-minute networking. So that wraps up the 2020 FinTech Drinks. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Next year, we'll be back. There's going to be 5 FinTech Drinks so far planned for 2021. So we're excited to see you again in the new year. Make sure you follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter to keep posted. But that's it. Wishing everyone a great rest of your evening. We'll see you in the networking. And if we're not seeing you in the chat, we'll see you again next year in 2021. Hopefully, maybe at the end of the year, a FinTech Drinks in person. We'll see. Overly optimistic. Maybe, maybe not. But cheers, everyone. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it. And we'll hopefully see you very soon. Take care.